Here's the story of 2020. It was a year for us to live in sync. So many things that need our understanding. It's time for us to think. It's the story of fellow humans who were busy with lives of their own. But they thought of bringing us together, and we can watch from home. We can all make this world much better. It's about what we're willing to confront. So sit back and enjoy the conversation of these rainbow warriors called the Queer Bunch. The Queer Bunch. The Queer Bunch. It's a great day to watch the Queer Bunch.
Hello, welcome, and salamu alaikum. Never thought I would be saying that ever in my life, and I'll explain to you why later. But you know what? It's a reality, and that's why we're here today. But first, guest and co-host, welcome to our episode on Islamophobia, a topic that is talked about around the world, and yet here we are. It is still happening. It is still a problem. And I'm wondering, is it due to ignorance, misguided beliefs, or other reasons? Well, we are going to take a deeper look into that topic today from queer people nonetheless, and it's just the best thing that we could do. Now, before we begin, I always love to check in with my co-host first, but as you can see, Tisha and Viviana are not with us today. Tisha is studying very hard and we are cheering them on, which means they won't be with us next month either. And Viviana is on her way to getting one step close to becoming named Miss Trans Global International, representing Canada, and we couldn't
Our big superhero, yeah.
Her. Like, we need to celebrate that, Viviana. Like, seriously, I'm proud our baby's growing up.
Is she going to even talk to us after that?
Yes.
I'm on the show going, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, Viviana has her own Latin show, if you didn't know, by the way. So, yeah.
I do know.
Yeah, there you go. But first, let's start with Joey. Welcome back. We're so happy to see you join us.
We
as a
brought her
guest
back
host once again. Yay!
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh my God, always a pleasure. But what I want to know from the co-host first is, how are you doing? And what comes to mind when you hear the term Islamophobia? Joey, go for it. What do you think?
Well, it's always sad, right? It's always sad when there's another reason to divide us, another reason to hate. And you know, I try not to think about all the different versions of hate that there are, but I'm glad we're talking about them because they're really just fears wrapped up in a whole lot of hang-ups too.
Cool.
Very true. And how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ty.
Hi, Kero. Hi, everyone. So I think this topic is very sensitive even to me, and I think one thing I do remember is growing up, I had a lot of Muslim friends because I grew up in a very Muslim dominated area. And we all went to school together. We celebrated Ramadan together. We ate together. We broke the fast together, and they came over for Christmas. So I did exist in that bubble until '93 when the riots took place, and that changed everything for all of us. I mean, it was for the first time we were hearing about terrorist attacks. We were like, one community was being singled out, and then you had, you know, it became like a warning, like, oh, please don't hang out in these areas and go there. So it kind of really changed the entire shape of what we saw the Muslim community as. And I think it was really sad because I'd grown up with a lot of those people and they are still friends even till today.
Where was that, Ty?
It was back home in India, in Bombay.
That happened? I didn't.
93 riots.
Oh, really?
Spread across the entire India, and so many people died because it was a clash between the Hindus and the Muslims. So it was really sad. And I mean, for me, I would say, like, our community, the Muslim community that we lived in, they protected all of us during those riots to make sure that we were not caught in between the clash. So it is a very sensitive topic, and I feel really sad that, you know, the state of what it has become today.
Thank you, Ty. And how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm actually good.
Everybody's forgetting that part.
I know. I mean, I got an email saying that tomorrow's a day off, and I was just like, what is tomorrow? And then I realized, oh wow, it is a really, really important day. So I'm just glad that I'll have the time to reflect on it.
Always happy to have you, Ty. Antoine, how about you? How are you doing first?
I'm doing very, very well. Thank you. I'm actually excited. I wrote my first song about celebrating moms called I Miss You Mom. It's coming out in a few days. So that's been keeping me busy and very, very excited in the last few days.
So exciting.
Exciting. You know what? I was going to talk about this more, maybe more later on in the show, but I'll talk about Islamophobia. To me, today was a bit of a wake up call because I was having a conversation looking at the show with Kero, and he was explaining to me how in the Arabic countries, apparently in Egypt and Lebanon, even my own country, there's a lot of rampant Islamophobia. Personally, I am Catholic, but I was born in Kuwait, which is a very much a Muslim country. And my neighborhood, my friends, I did go to Catholic church, but my parents insisted, because we lived in a country like that, to respect the country. We learned the Quran. Our friends were Muslim. Like I said, my dad had a lot of sheikhs friends. We would go to Ramadan celebrations. I loved Ramadan in the neighborhood. So quiet during the day, and then the best foods in the evening. We had the best programming on TV, music.
Yeah, the best. It's true.
I loved Ramadan programming. So I don't know, and I guess I feel like I was in a bubble now all of a sudden, because until recently, until coming together is what I started hearing Islamophobia, even racism. It just wasn't a factor for me growing up, but it makes me more passionate about doing something about it, because I really like the version that I known when I was a kid, rather than the version of people hating anybody for any reason. So
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Antoine. And if you care, I'm doing good.
But you don't, so let's go on.
So no, but I really want to talk about the term Islamophobia, because for me, it's taken on an evolution in my life. I mean, I'm Coptic Orthodox Christian from Egypt. We're conservative and very, very hardcore fanatic Christians at the end of the day. And I admitted openly, I never ever thought, like I said earlier, that I'm going to say Salamu Alaikum, because it's not something we were told.
I say Salamu Alaikum every day in my childhood.
It's a Muslim thing. It's a Muslim thing. You don't say, you only say salam.
Wow.
Which is hilarious, because Salamu Alaikum means peace be upon you.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful thing. And you're like, no, we're just like peace, yo. Like, what? It's like, why is this so Muslim, right? The term is beautiful. So it's, and to let alone to talk.
See, that part is what I don't understand. I don't feel that Salamu Alaikum, like, while it is used in Islam, I feel that's a beautiful sentiment. So
yeah, it is.
It's not necessarily a religious sentiment.
Yeah, no, but that's the thing. It's the upbringing that is taught in Egypt, and learning. Learning the Quran was a big no-no. We were like school. You come back, you're told don't repeat the words.
We are so different.
It's the devil and so on, like literally, right? So anyway,
I can no longer be a producer anymore.
We are going to get into more detail about that later. I don't want to take away from our introducing our amazing guests today, and I'm so excited because it's those two people have such big voices and they do so much for the community, and we couldn't be more honored to have you both on here. So first, we have the incredibly amazing human Farouk Khaki. Farouk, he is a refugee and immigration lawyer. His practice primarily involves representing women fleeing gender violence, LGBTQI people fleeing persecution because of their sexual orientation and or gender identity, as well as people fleeing persecution because of their HIV status. And he's also the founder of Salam, which is a queer Muslim community and organization he originally started in 1991, and it's still going on today. And even more incredible is in May 2009, he co-founded the El Tawheed Juma Circle, which is his partner, Troy Jackson, and dear friend, Dr. Laurie Silvers, have started together. He's also the co-founder of Canadian Muslim Union, of which he is the Secretary General, as well as co-founder of the Muslim AIDS Project. And Farouk has set sat on many boards and is public speaker on Islam, the immigration refugee system, human rights, racism, politics, and HIV/AIDS. Farouk, it is so nice to
He's
have you
also
with
the
us here
recipient
today.
of Lifetime Achievement Award, Inspire Awards last
Here you
year.
go. Right. So
There you go.
just to add on the list, if we added actually everything he accomplished, the show would be over. We wouldn't be able to have a discussion. But Farouk, we're so happy to have you with us here today. How are you doing? And same question. Tell us what comes to mind when you hear the term Islamophobia.
Well, I'm happy to be here because you gave a great introduction, and some of it is dated, so I got to actually update it.
I copied it from your website.
I want to hire you, and what do I, and how am I? Well, you know, hey, I'd rather be somewhere on the beach watching a sunset in 20 somewhat degree weather, but I'm here in Toronto, and I love Toronto, so yeah, alhamdulillah. And what do I think of Islamophobia when I hear the word Islamophobia? So I am Muslim, and you know, Antoine, you're Christian who grew up in a Muslim country, and I'm a Muslim who grew up in predominantly Christian countries, and I was one of, I think, 5 or 6 kids in my elementary school in England who were not Christian. And the only one who actually went to assembly because my parents didn't give me a note because they wanted me to learn. They wanted me to learn what was going on, and the Islam that I grew up with, it was easy to embrace Christianity and Judaism and the prophets and the figures from those traditions. And so that's how I grew up. I also grew up at a time when in North America, when people didn't know what Muslims were, and those were the good old days. You know, before, not that people know what Muslims are today, but nobody even knew what that, it was such a rare sort of thing. Our population was quite small, unless people had traveled or had come into particular contact. People didn't know what Muslims were. And I mean, you still see that, right? Because attacks against people who are imputed to be Muslim, Sikhs, for example, and so on, like, it still shows that people don't know what Muslims are. But before, it was the ignorance of bliss, where we weren't being targeted, we were just being ignored. And which is better or which is worse, I'm not sure. But I do remember those days, and I think it's an important conversation. Sometimes as queer folk, our narratives as people of color or somehow otherwise marginalized, or our folk or our intersectionalities are sometimes forgotten or pushed to the sidelines when we're talking about our queerness, but we are the sum total of our experiences and of how we live in our bodies, right? So Islamophobia for me is a very real thing. Even if I don't necessarily experience it in the same way as other Muslims might, because of my privileges, because people may not necessarily perceive me to be Muslim because I don't look Muslim to them, or whatever that might be. But that's also a manifestation of Islamophobia, right? You don't look Muslim.
It's all those jackets that you wear that have so much
all the glitter.
Those beautiful glitter jackets. That's what
keep them guessing, right?
Thank you so much.
Very nicely put, actually. And I'm thinking maybe it also has to do with media. Media is a lot louder these days. In the old days, we were almost segregated. Everyone in their own country. We didn't hear about everybody else, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
So next we have Chaz Islam. So Chaz is a non-binary queer Muslim amazing human that I love very much. They go by the pronouns they them. Now Chaz really enjoys staying home with their cat and deepening their understanding of the self. If you want to meet someone who's obsessed with their cat, it's Chaz.
Okay.
She will take stray cats. Someone's cat is like they are
cat sanctuary.
They are a cat lover, and it's adorable. Now, other than that, Chaz Islam is CHIWOS, research associate. I'm going to ask you to tell me what those letters mean. And KTE, which is Beyond the Data Champion Coordinator. Chaz also works at the Alliance for South Asian AIDS Prevention, also known as ASAPS, as the Champs in Action Project Coordinator, which is an amazing project. I had the opportunity to
Which we should announce that ASAP has just...
Yes, wait a minute. Wait, hold on. Now, they are part of also the Trans Interweaving Project and Transpose Community Advisories, and they are a member of the HALCO Board of Directors. And speaking of ASAP, we are so happy to announce that ASAP is now officially our partner, presenting partner for the Queer Bunch. They've taken it on, which is fantastic. It means a lot to us. And having Ty with us, who's an amazing human being, and Chaz from ASAP, we are so happy to
I feel like you're ganging up on us.
Yeah, we're taking over.
ASAP, once you start working at ASAP, they become family, and I will let them take over.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's the best thing about it. Now, Chaz, how are you doing, my non-binary dumpster? And tell me, what comes to mind when you hear the term Islamophobia?
Yeah. Well, I'm doing fine. Just being here is really great. Earlier in the day, I had a little bit of, meat ache, whatever, but it's all right. So Islamophobia, I grew up in Canada and grew up in Labrador, then Nova Scotia, then British Columbia, then Ontario. And I feel that, my experiences have been shaped by all of those different experiences growing up in these sort of remote areas as well as urban areas. When I think about Islamophobia, in the 90s, in the early 90s, I had just gotten into university, and I met, some great friends who have been my friends since then, and they were all Muslim women, and they, at the time there was a lot of Islamophobia because the U.S., had just gone into Iraq, and all of this stuff was happening in the Middle East, and also in India, right? So then I teamed up with these women, and these women were go-getters. They were like anything that that reeked of Islamophobia, they would go and speak to the folks that that produced this thing. So the newspaper at the time came out with their sort of rendition of Islamophobia, and my friends were like, okay, we have to meet with the editor. And so they arranged a meeting with the editor. They got in, they spoke, and the editor agreed. And so, within that, space of like 2 or 3 weeks, they changed their sort of their theme, and it was no longer Islamophobic, but gave the other side. And that was quite radical, I guess, because that's never been done before. And at the same time that they were fighting against, that, they were also fighting against the people who were Muslim, who wanted women to sort of be in their homes and not, stand up or whatever. Yeah, so that was really crazy. But I felt so much love for these women, and I just followed along, watching them. he was great.
Yeah, that's fantastic that you shared that. That's pretty powerful because your insight of Islamophobia is empowering, empowered by Muslim women who are very often oppressed by society even further when it comes to Islamophobia,
Yeah.
not within Islam but within outside of Islam. So and it's so that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Now, Farouk and Chaz, we have a show waiting for both of you, so be ready for an amazing conversation. We are very excited to be talking about this very important and much needed conversation with both of you. But before we do that, the time has come for a commercial break. So take a break, folks. Viewers, we'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Tyler!
I just found out I've got HIV. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm scared.
Hey, I know you're scared. I've been living with HIV for 25 years, and with treatment today, I'm living a long, healthy life. You can too.
Maybe I will be okay.
Welcome back, folks. Today's topic is all about Islamophobia. So let's get the ball rolling on this conversation, starting with Ty. Ty, it's all yours.
It's always mine. So yeah, I know that this is quite a sensitive topic, and I think each one of us have already gone ahead and shared what is our opinion and feeling around the word Islamophobia. So my question is that obviously Islamophobia, the word, has been around now for quite some time. And I also feel that over the years, it is not getting better. Because I mean, I've experienced this word as a child, and now I'm a grown adult and I'm still hearing it and seeing it, and it's become a lot more forceful now.
Yeah.
Why do you think that it's getting more intense?
Good
Who wants
question.
to start? Farouk or Chaz?
Somebody take it. Okay,
Yeah.
Chaz, take it.
So, yeah, like I think it's getting more intense because there's been there's a flood of, like, especially in Canada and North America, there's been a flood of refugees coming from those countries that are maybe have a lot of Muslims or Muslim dominant, and it speaks to the kind of strife or unrest that these refugees are experiencing in their home country, right? So I think that plays into it. I'm not saying that it's the refugees' fault. It is the situation in their countries that are causing them to come to maybe brighter pastures, right? But in coming to the brighter pastures, some of them are received very well, but most of them are received with like hesitation, suspicion, surveillance, especially people who are coming on their own and without family. So yeah, that's maybe one of the reasons.
Yeah.
Actually, that's brilliant. I never thought. Also, there's always the perception, along with refugees coming from our countries, Lebanon, Syria, whatever, is that they might be terrorists, they might be bad people. They're coming here because their countries don't want them. So you got that attached to it as well, kind of thing.
Yeah.
If I can, I mean, I think refugees.
Nobody can stop you.
You better not try. When you talk about refugees, there is a certain segment of Canadian society, a certain segment, that sees all refugees, no matter who they are, particularly racialized folk from geopolitical South countries, as being opportunists, as being dishonest, past governments former ministers of immigration who are now premiers and stuff have used this kind of rhetoric to demonize refugees, right? Of all
Right.
types, not just Muslims, not just black and brown folk, but from everywhere. But different people experience differential impacts. As the numbers of racialized communities have grown, particularly in cities like Toronto, I think the predominant sort of dominant culture communities often feel threatened, right? That they're going to be replaced. And when people have different cultures, different languages, different religions, and let's be clear, the tension between Islam and Christianity goes back, 1,300 years. Yeah. I mean, when Islam came to Europe's door, Europe trembled. And sometimes Europe opened the door. So the Muslims didn't invade Spain. They were welcomed into Spain. That's not how they left, but that's how they arrived. And so what's wrapped up in all of this is politics, and we see the rise of something called Islamophobia, along with political events. And political strategies, not just in terms of 9/11, but the whole colonial discourse and how that and the impoverization of the geopolitical South, colonization, the Gulf Wars, all of that is what has contributed. And I like to talk about Lego sets, right? Because I deal with my kid and how you build up the building blocks. And I see the construction of Islamophobia, and I'm not even sure that I like the expression Islamophobia, because what it actually does is it hides the impact that it has on human beings. Talk about Islamophobia. This is not something that's done in the abstract. It's not being done to a religion. It's actually being done to living human beings. Okay. But I think that it is, as we see right-wing sort of narratives sweep across the globe from Brazil to North America to Europe and other places, with that comes political leveraging, demonizing others, and along with that has seen a rise in stereotyping and also marginalizing, and hence the rise of Islamophobia, fear of the other. I think there's a lot of things that people are afraid of these days, and so it's everyone's looking for the boogeyman or the boogie person.
The boogie person.
Exactly.
And let's be inclusive about the boogeyman. No. Anyway, but
these were brilliant answers. Honestly, I can't believe that I teared up. Just the idea that people, really decent, loving people who are escaping horrible countries to come here to be welcomed, they're really good people, and to be pinned by politicians as the bad boogeyman is really a shitty feeling.
But it's also
when we look at images, so again, this is my refugee advocacy. When we see images of parents with little children climbing onto boats or handing their children up to somebody to take them out of the country. Think about what this person is dealing with in terms of balancing that it is more dangerous to remain where they are for the life of the child than to get onto that rickety boat or to hand your child off to a stranger.
Right.
That's
Think of that for a second and sit with that and think about whether we would do that with our child or our cat or our dog, for example.
Right.
Right?
That's very, very powerful. Very, very powerful what you both said, actually. Like it's true, because like it's not getting better. And also with the rise of politics, it influences so many things, and we're seeing a repetitive pattern of behavior when it comes to liberals taking over, conservatives taking over. Liberals in the US, here, around the world, we keep on repeating history and reinventing the same wheel over and over, but we're not learning from it. And I feel that this impacts why Islamophobia is not getting better, because that circle of ignorance and uneducated people and what they see objectified to constantly is what they subjected to constantly, not objectified, is being repeated over and over and over, and they're not learning or progressing beyond that.
I mean, the reality is hate is part of human nature. It's been,
but it comes
in but I don't know. It comes in circles throughout history. Greeks were hated at some point. Romans were hated at some point. Irish were hated at some point. There's always somebody hating somebody. So
Yeah, no,
anyway.
that's true. But it's that is that, like, you don't hear hate against the Greeks or the Romans or whatever. Now
Anymore. Yeah,
Islamophobia is like,
Islamophobia is still repeating.
yeah,
So,
right.
so
Right.
there's hate. So there's hate, and there's dehumanization,
yes.
Thank you.
right? And so we see or prejudice and dehumanization. So most people have some kind of stereotypes about somebody else, but it is when we start to say that somebody is less worthy, somebody is less human, that somebody is less worthy.
How is anybody less human? Yeah.
Exactly, right? But we see this today. We see exceptionalism being made, that no, you don't deserve the same rights as somebody else because, and so this is also where Islamophobia ties in, where Muslims are not deserving because they are seen as being culturally or religiously other or different. And so then they don't deserve the same degree of humanity or consideration as other people do, right? Because of their religion or because of their heritage. So.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And,
thank you for that.
There's so many different, kinds of Muslims, right? Like, I mean, the Sufis made it into, like, in the India, like, at the time it wasn't divided into these countries, but they were regions, and the Sufis made it in, and they brought, their religion, but they didn't, they weren't going to force it on anyone. They brought other things that were, very appealing to, the people there already. And so, that was way back in the past. But, these are examples that I think people need to remember or need to learn about, because maybe these examples might make us more accepting of one another, right?
Yeah. Thanks for that, Chaz. And that actually is a good segue into Joey's question, actually.
Yeah.
So,
I'm going to, so we're exposed to Islam. I'm going to read my question. It's long, a little long. We're exposed to Islam predominantly through the media. And most recently, we've been exposed to it through what was going on in Afghanistan with the Taliban. And we know that Muslim women have lost their rights, their freedom, or at least they're afraid for their lives now. And the media is reporting on this fear. So my question is, because on this side of the planet, fear feeds Islamophobia, do alternative non-patriarchal interpretations of the Quran exist?
oh, good question.
As many as there are Christian non-patriarchal
So zero.
interpretations. You can answer that any way you like.
Yeah. In the 90s, I told you about, the Muslim women, the young Muslim women who I met, who became friends.
Right.
That's when my introduction kind of to Islam really began. Like I had, followed Islam, as a child, etc. But I never really got to the heart of it, or the hearts, because there are many. And so I started with Muslim feminist scholars like Fatima Mernisi, right? And Amina Wadud, right? Like all of these scholars had something to say about the way the Quran was interpreted. And the way the Quran was interpreted, the majority of interpretation that was known to the world, were from men, right? But there are other interpretations that are, from women that are there, that exist, and that makes sense, So I started with all of that, and I was committed to sort of like disarming the Islamophobia in my university. So, that's what gave me the fire to do so.
Nice.
I love that.
Nice.
I didn't
I
know
love that too.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
The,
Farouk.
Yeah. So I always say that Islam is not a monolith, just like Christianity or any other tradition or political philosophy or culture. Nothing is a monolith. And Shaz, I really like the many hearts of Islam.
I like that too. I'm a Muslim.
I'm gonna quote you, right? The reality is that patriarchy is a universal factor in any tradition, in every tradition.
Sure.
And the glimmers of non-patriarchal thinking are often drowned out and erased. And there was certainly part of that process has also been European colonialism, eradicating cultures and queer and trans identities, even in the geopolitical South, so that countries that didn't have these laws now stick to their colonially inherited laws, like scripture, even though their colonizers have shed them.
Absolutely.
But Chaz is absolutely correct that there has always been a feminist. First of all, there's always been, in my opinion, there's always been a feminist narrative in Islam from the very first.
Oh God,
the first person to embrace Muhammad's message was his wife Khadija. The first person to be martyred was Sumaya, an enslaved woman who didn't recant, right? So her declaration of faith. So women have always been very strategic within the Islamic narrative, but of course patriarchy has also affected us. Islam didn't eradicate that, and certainly didn't eradicate that after the life of the Prophet. So whatever changes happened during his lifetime, but at the same time, in 1400 years, there's been a very rich discourse, and we are particularly seeing a very rich discourse now. But I remember being really struck. Khalid Abu Fadl is an Egyptian scholar in the United States. He is what I call a progressive traditionalist. So he arrives at progressive interpretations through a very traditional, which I think is really important because it speaks to a particular narrative and a particular population. But there is no singular narrative. There is no singular interpretation. But I remember him saying one day at one of his speaking engagements that there was a summary of the work of female Hanafi jurists, and so these are within a particular jurisprudential school within Sunni Islam, and that the summary of the female scholars of their work was 18 volumes. Wow. And today there are no female jurists in that tradition.
That's amazing.
But historically, there is a summary of their work that takes up 18 volumes. Wow. So there's also been an erasure, but what we also have is a birthing. And I think that this is the birthing that we're talking about. Even this conversation is part of that. How do Muslims and non-Muslims engage in pluralistic societies and in conversation? There's an increasing feminist discourse. And, you mentioned Amina Wadud, Shaz, right? And Amina performed Troy and Maya Islamic Marriage, right, in South Africa in 2014. So, these conversations are going on and the linkages are being made between feminism and queer theory and queer liberation, and the linkages between apartheid and gender and race, and how these are all interconnected. And for many of us as Muslims, these are the multiplicity of our lived realities. So the change is there, it's happening, but revolutions don't start in a day or even in a century sometimes.
No, it's true. It does take time.
Sorry, I think it's coming through, Salam, because I remember when I first went to one of it was one of the I think it was after Ramadan, it was like Eid prayers, right? And you had it at the 519, and it was the first time I saw like everyone. Like I saw, you know, Muslims, Christians,
Nice.
Buddhists, whatever, anyone, you know, coming together and praying. And that was really big for me because I'd never seen that. And also because it had a queer sort of, you know, theme or whatever. It was something like magic, but it was real. And I think that for me was sort of my birthing into, you know, into this sort of multiplicity.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah, thanks for that, Chaz. And
Thank you.
that leads me to my question, and that what I want to look at is more the aspects of internalized Islamophobia due to being queer, trans, or having a different sexual orientation, gender identities, or sexual expressions. Now, what advice would you give to a Muslim person who is trying to come to terms with their sexual orientation and try to consolidate their religious beliefs at the same time?
Good question.
Good question. Yeah, good question.
Mm-hmm.
El Farouk.
Oh my God, we're putting you on a very big.
That's not a question.
Spotlight, though.
That's a thesis.
That's not a question. That's a thesis.
Yeah. So again, I think you know we sort of talked a little bit about some of this stuff when we were offline and stuff. But I think it also really depends on where you are and how you're growing up and where your family comes from and where your family is. So coming to a place like Toronto, so 10% of Toronto is Muslim, at least 10% of the population of the GTA, but you know, from 180 different ethnic groups and so on and so forth. And again, it depends on what city you're in, because if you're in Nunavut, chances are you're not going to have very many Muslims around. My neighbors, their nephews, part of their family is Muslim. Their nephews started going to school down over here, and they've never been to school with other Muslim kids, and so this has been a little bit. It was a little bit of a so it's Ramadan. Like all the kids are fasting. All the Muslim kids are fasting. Oh, okay. You know, that type of stuff. But it depends on where you grow up and how you grow up. There is a certain amount of shelter and insulation in bigger cities. But that it also means that Muslim kids are often growing up within Muslim spaces and Muslim communities. And that their predominant circle of socialization might be not just other Muslims, but other Muslims from the same ethno-racial, linguistic community, depending on what part of the city that they're living in and so on. So sometimes that's very difficult. Like they may not experience Islamophobia because in the same way because they're fairly insulated or maybe even ghettoized within particular areas or within particular communities, depending on where they live. For those Muslims who might live in small communities where there's very few Muslims, they might not be known to be Muslim, or it may not make any really difference because they're just like everybody else, because there's no separate Muslim space or sort of identity. But in places where Muslim kids are surrounded by other Muslims, like in places like Toronto and coming out, it's going to be very difficult because the narrative has become through colonialism and migration, because remember, migrated communities tend to be more socially conservative than back home. Because back home moves on and immigrants tend to cocoon and retreat and not move on. And so the nuances and the spaces that were available for queer folk are erased. And the narratives, so even, you know, some years ago, there was a guy here who wrote a book about his that takes place in his home country, Muslim guy. And I won't mention the community because it's not important. But in one part of the book, he mentions Boys Town in the capital city. And that book was written in their not in English but in the language of that community. But the book was boycotted by, I was told, by the community here, because it wasn't like he made up Boys Town,
No.
but they didn't want
Right.
it. They didn't want
You
it
don't.
there. They didn't want it written. So what was reality? What was fact? Right? My father would say to me, "Yeah, we always knew people. People would always talk. There would be, whispers or jokes, but nobody ever
You
said,
know.
let's go kill these folk or let's run them out of town or stuff like that, right?"
Mhm.
Right.
And these things have changed, and so also has developed this narrative that you can't be Muslim and be gay, or you can't be Muslim and be this, or this ridiculous notion that says, well, I accept you, but Islam doesn't. So, as a Muslim, I say, well, Allah is Al-Rahman and Al-Rahim. Allah is the all-loving, the all-merciful, but somehow your compassion towards me is greater than God's compassion, right?
Yeah.
So you get all of these theological somersaults that are being done. So, when I ran for politics and in 2009, and people didn't vote for me because Muslims didn't vote for me or some of the Muslims didn't vote for me because I was gay, but they were okay to vote for somebody who was gay as long as they were not Muslim, right? So it's icky, right? And so I think it's very, very difficult. And I would say to those Muslim kids that if you can, know that you have options. I think one of the things that COVID has done is it's forced us onto online platforms. And hopefully that means that we're more accessible to more people around the world in ways that we couldn't be before or never thought of being before, because we had the technology, but we didn't have the need, right? And so when we went into COVID retreat, all of a sudden our mosque, which used to meet in real time, went online. And even though we had already had an online component, now there was no difference between anyone in Toronto and somebody in Singapore or in South Africa that was calling in, and that people find that, and they find some shelter and some connection and some community in those spaces, and to know that in fact Islam is not a monolith, that there are many hearts. And the Islam that quickens their heart is the Islam that maybe they need to find, seek, and hold on to.
Very nice.
Thank you for that, Farouk. Chaz.
Thank you.
Anything to add?
Yes, sorry. Yes, that. I mean, I just want to say that I remember a research study that was done like as part of a class, as part of a program in university that was done by my friend, and it was fairly recent. I think a few years back, and the research study focused on the sexual health needs of young Muslim people, right? And so, a survey, an online survey was sent out, and the results were that one, the young Muslims who identified as other than, straight, they have not, told anyone about them being queer. And that was one. Number two was that, yes, they were having, like sexual interactions with non-Muslims as well as Muslims.
Yeah.
But at the same time, again, none of it was shared with anyone that they knew. And three was that they did recognize that there was a need for a hub, like a place where they could all go and, like get some help, get some, supplies, get some, understanding of who they are, right? Because they still wanted to be like, and at the same time, be able to do all the things that, other kids can do, right? So I thought that was really, quite interesting. And I felt, really bad because I don't think there is anything out there that is, primarily for them.
So thanks for that, Chaz. Thank you so much. Both very, very insightful things to think about. Like really, really awesome. Antoine, your question.
We're unpacking a lot. Actually, there's a bit of a bit to my question. First, I encountered a bit of Islam. I remember somebody mentioning 9/11 on the show now. I encountered some Islamophobia myself. I'm Christian Catholic, but on 9/11, I walking into the office and starting to hear what was happening, my heart sank. The first thing that I did, called my mother and I said, we're going to be blamed for this. All Arabs and all probably Muslims, anybody who looks like a Muslim is going to be blamed for this. They're not going to blame the terrorists. They're going to blame everybody. So I'm trying to soothe myself. Everybody in the office is having, the reactions that we were all having that day. And I get on the computer and I get on gay.com. Back then there was something called gay.com. And I end up with somebody right away saying, fucking get out of our fucking country, you Muslim. I said, well, I'm not Muslim, I'm Christian. Yes, you're still Muslims. Like, well, obviously there's a sign of Islamophobia. Name Elhashem right away is Muslim, which shouldn't really matter in either cases. But last time I checked, I'm Canadian. No, you'll never be a Canadian. You're a fucking Muslim. Get out of my country.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's just and then Kero telling me, or what I figured out today, that we bring a lot of that Christians or whatever from other countries when we get here. What would we recommend or suggest to somebody to help them change their views towards feeling that way? Is there anything we can really I don't know.
Like my approach to my approach to folks who are in conflict, whether with me in terms of Islamophobia, like no one ever thinks that I'm Muslim. Until
until they see your last name.
Yes. That's not even my real last name. But that's another story. So my approach is like, if they're that angry, if they're like, get out of here, I don't want to talk to you, whatever, then there's nothing for me to do. Then
fair enough.
Wait until there may be a second time. And a second time may present that person, or maybe a different person, but with a little less, little less hostile.
Sure.
They might feel, they might be the same way. I would ask them questions like, who made you feel that way? Why do you feel that way?
Why do you feel that way?
And do you know that, as Farouk said, there are as many Muslims as there are Christians, as there are, people in this world. And so there is, no way that we can generalize and say that, everyone is like this. And also no way that we should generalize, right?
Sure.
And so, I probably wouldn't get that far, but, I would try. And, in other ways, it has worked for me. But, I have to wait, for more than maybe a year or 2 years, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Chaz. Farouk.
Any advice?
I kept thinking, Chaz, you're so patient. I wouldn't have the patience to have these conversations with people. You should be. My middle finger would be sort of waving in the wind at some point, right? But I think a lot of my father, my late father, always used to talk about the human face of Islam and about humanizing. And we see this in our own narratives as queer people when we were doing Bill 167 back in the 1990s, and the majority of Ontarians were against giving same-sex couples the same benefits as heterosexual common law couples and so on. People started telling their stories, their lived experience of harm and marginalization. And this is what opened up people's hearts. Yes. And this is what shifted, once their hearts opened, it shifted their minds. And so
we have to give a face,
give a face, give a human face. And so Chaz, I think you actually came to an iftar the first time, the peace iftar. And I think you came with Anita, if I recall correctly, right? Was it?
Yes.
Yes, right. And the idea of the iftar was actually born to me because I went to a Passover Seder hosted by a lesbian couple at a Christian church. And I thought, this is so wonderfully subversive. How can I translate this into something Muslim, right? And so the Peace Iftar was born out of that, which is invite everybody to come in, invite everybody to break bread together, because, you know, that is such a wonderful medium, because we all got to eat, right? You know,
Right.
And so on. And then invite everybody to join in prayer and demystify that, you know, demystify for the Muslims that praying behind a woman ain't going to result in thunderbolts or lightning, and demystify for the non-Muslims that, you know, when they put their head on the ground, they ain't going to be sinking into hell. And so, you know, you lived shared experience, sharing food, sharing experience.
I love that, Alfred.
Humanizing the other, I think, is our way forward. And so
I love it.
Even though the composition of this panel and the conversation is part of that process, right?
Yeah.
So,
to me, that actually really, your advice really speaks to my Middle Eastern sensibility. Open your door, bring them in, share food together, they'll get to know you.
Marhaba, ahlan wa sahlan.
May it always be green for you. Yes.
Right? Now, so I must admit, this conversation is incredibly eye-opening, and I have learned even more. I thought I knew it all. Obviously, I don't. But, you know, I grew up one of those Islamophobic Coptic Orthodox Christians, and I went by what was taught to me more than anything. And it wasn't until I went back to Egypt in 2005 when I met my cousin's best friend, a beautiful young Muslim woman, and I saw how Christians and Muslims lived in peace alongside one another, that it started changing my perspective and made me start questioning everything I was actually taught growing up here in Canada. Like, I came here when I was 3 from Egypt, so all I knew is what was constantly told to me, because anything even remotely Muslim on TV, my parents would turn it off. But what I learned, like
terrible parents.
Yeah. But one of the biggest things that I've learned, that it would, like any religion, Coptic Orthodox being one, and so on, there are fanatics, and that's where the problem is, because that's where the media holds on to into fanaticism and subjects so many of us to that. I mean, let's take a look at the evangelists in the US, for example. They'll never be called terrorists by the media here or so on. But mind you, go back home and in the Arab world, they will, you know. But because of the media and interpretation, Muslim people in movies and shows and are so misdirected. They misdirected our views. And speaking of 9/11 earlier, I remember, like, when I saw that, I was a flight attendant. And I got stuck. I got stopped at customs. I mean, why are you going to the US? I'm like, I'm in full uniform. I'm the head purser. I'm working. Like, you know, it was absolutely ridiculous to what point. Yeah. You know, but God forbid that the tables turn around on Christians, Jews, or anything like that. And it's, I mean, on Jews it is turned, and that's a whole different conversation. But I remember, one of the biggest things is asking my mom one day about an amazing story I read in the news. And it was about this Muslim man who adopted children with severe disabilities, and those kids did not have long to live, but he gave them love and compassion and empathy and a happy home before they left this earth. And I remember asking my mom, I'm like, so you're telling me this man, because he's not Christian, is going to go to hell? And he's more Christian than you, me, and the whole church combined together. My mom was completely stumped. And that's when I realized, I'm like, this is something for a lot of people to think about. Those are the stories you don't hear. Those are the stories that the media is not pushing. They're not going to make a movie about this man, but they should, because it's absolutely beautiful. Yes.
There's a little video about him. I don't remember what it's on. And he's adopted something like 80 children. He's Libyan, I think. I think he's originally Libyan, lives in California.
Yes.
And he adopts these children, like he's a caregiver, and then he adopts these kids and becomes and takes care of them till they...
I cry every time, and I'm already about to, and I remember the video. But this is something to let our viewers to think about. And viewers, you watching this, we're going to give you time to think about that, and we'll be right back after this break. All right, don't go anywhere. Let's wrap this up.
Kero, you can't have a long wrap up. I have to go.
I know it's
so you can't do your wrong. You're gonna say goodbye.
Excuse me. Does your place always look like that?
No, this is not my place.
That's not my place.
That's the background.
That's the background. I'm like, you fucker. How do you? I'm sorry. I mean, like, how does your place look at? Can't tell it's the background. I can tell from the line. Yeah, it looks really perfect. But I'm like, really?
I know. I wish. I honestly wish. But yeah. Okay.
I gotta tell you, we did, the Color of Love, that book. So the guy came to photograph us, and Troy didn't know he was coming, and he was pissed off at me. So I took the picture. It's in the book. It's in our very, very messy kitchen, right? And with our at that time 2-year-old or 3-year-old or whatever. So I'm like always like, okay, you gotta fluff it up or have a backdrop, right? So I'm like, Antoine, that's beautiful. I want an invitation one day.
I'll send you the link to download the photo.
Oh, there you go. Thank you. I'll send you the link. Yeah.
All right. Excellent. So let's wrap this up.
But like I said, it's just goodbyes. No.
Yes.
What do you think? Okay, 3,
yes,
2,
mother.
1, go.
I'm scheduling my post-quarantine hookup itinerary.
I'm exploring every nook and cranny of self-love.
I'm engaging with online fetish communities I never even knew existed.
I am flattening that curve, honey. Ugh, tighter. Oh, tighter. Ugh.
Mother, I'm your kid, I'm your star. Oh mother, in my heart when we're far. Mama, your warm blanket holds me snug. Mama, yeah mama, love your smile and your hug. أمي بحب أضحك معك.
Guests, viewers, hosts, this was such an amazing conversation. Wow. And that brings us to the end of our show where, we want to say goodnight. But before that, before we say goodbye, just a reminder to our viewers that the episode, The Queer Bunch, the show is available on YouTube, on Facebook. Visit just Google or look up The Queer Bunch and you'll find everything that you need. So until then, keep safe, stay diligent, and most importantly, keep being resilient and stop being friggin' Islamophobic. Love from the queer family to yours. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.